G'day guys, welcome to another episode of the Pumped on Property Show with Ben and Simon. Now in this episode, we kick things off by looking at how to actually snag a couple of $1,000 a week, 8 grand a month, or $100,000 per year of passive income over the next 15 years through property investing.
Now, after sharing a simple strategy with everyone, we go into some case studies, some stories of previous clients that we've worked with or friends that we've supported throughout this journey. And then we dive deep into the why you should actually think about trying to replace $100,000 per year worth of passive income. And to be honest, I don't think it's going to be what you expect. So let's get stuck into it. Now, I love to talk to all of my friends and family about property investing and generating a passive income. A lot of people I talk to are on that sort of 100K income at the moment. Seems to be a bit of a norm for people that are in their late 20s or 30s at the moment. And one of the questions that I get asked consistently is, how can I replace my current annual salary? Like, how do I generate a passive income of 100K per year? And thinking longer term, of course, nobody thinks they can do it overnight, but, how do we do that? How do we actually replace $100,000 worth of passive income?
This is something that I wish I had have had, to be honest with you, years and years ago, because I just sort of potted when I first started as an investor. Like I thought, honestly, the more properties I had, the closer to financial freedom I'd actually be. And so I started to buy, like so many of us do, just properties either close to home or that I could afford close to home. um, with no real scope of like what the ideal investment property looked like and no real scope of like what the ideal strategy looked like. So had I have gone back then, I just wanted 2 grand a week, 100 grand a year, or 8K per month in passive income, I could have easily, with my skills at that time, reverse engineered a strategy, but there wasn't people talking about it like this at that time. And so I was just trying to figure it out. And I wasn't asking the right questions back then either, because there were plenty of people around that were already living that. I just was asking them like things that had nothing to do with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and let's be real, like people probably weren't wishing for 100K back then either. You're getting a bit long in the tooth there, Betty.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like I was asking most people for probably more than they wanted to tell me already, you know what I mean? But a simple strategy these days is the 3 property strategy. So we've done other videos on this sort of idea, which is the 2 properties of financial freedom or the 3 properties of financial freedom. And what this effectively looks at like, and for some people that we've worked with or some people out there listening to this, they could do it in 6 months or a year. I've had plenty of clients complete the strategy in that time, at least the first stage, which is the buying phase. Um, or alternatively, like some people, will take 10, 15 years to accumulate those properties. And before I talk about the strategy, remember Dave from Sydney?
Yep.
So Dave came to our business years ago. I think it was in about 2017. It's funny because he came when Brisbane was at the bottom and he's reached out because he's looking at Melbourne and Melbourne's at the bottom right now too.
He knows what he knows.
He knows what he knows. So he'd been investing in Sydney before he reached out to us for over 20 years. He'd bought 3 houses over a period of about 15 years. And then slowly over the 5 years after that, he built 3 granny flats on each of them. So he had 3 houses with 3 granny flats, which isn't today's strategy, but it's just an example of someone that did it really slowly. And then he came to us and he bought a 4th home and built a 4th granny flat. And since buying that home in 17, it's actually doubled in value for him. So he's super stoked. Now, this guy never really earned much more than 100K per year. He also had a family home in Sydney, raised a whole bunch of kids. But he just chipped away, and now he's sort of in his 50s and he's sitting on well over 200K per year of passive income, basically owns everything completely outright, and now was reaching out because he wants to get his kids involved with the business so that we can help them do something similar, because he's like, they won't listen to me because he's too close to them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, which is an absolute success story. And it makes me so happy because a lot of the stuff you see online, it's all short term. It's all sacrifice, hard work, discipline. And look, there is a level of that for sure. But if you want to play the long game, you can do it slowly. But the reality is the sooner you accumulate, the sooner you can consolidate, the sooner you can be free.
Yeah.
So, for me, I went super hard and I wasn't earning 100 grand per year when I built my property portfolio. But I did have extremely low interest rates,
Mm,
which definitely helped with serviceability to build that portfolio. But this is where you have a bit of a decision to make, right? You can either choose to play that long game and go one property every 5 years in the right market at the right time. And that's not necessarily going to negatively impact your lifestyle too much.
mhm.
Whereas if you are trying to go hard, then it can be a lot more challenging. You're going to sacrifice the holidays, you're going to sacrifice the luxuries, and that's cool if you're willing to do so. But then for me personally, like I accumulated so hard and so fast, and then interest rates rose, and then I was kind of stuck, and I haven't been able to add any value and come back and build the granny flats because I've all of my savings has been sucked away and all of my income goes to
Mm.
just holding those properties now. So, there's benefits to everything and there's, I guess hardship or cons to everything that we choose to do.
Mm. And it's like that quote, it's just like choose your stress. Like you're
Mm,
gonna be stressed from doing a lot. You're also gonna be stressed from doing nothing. Um, you're gonna be stressed regardless of which place or which path you take. So it could be, the stress of working for the next 45 or 50 years, or it could be the stress of working towards financial freedom over the next 15. And
sure.
as someone that's choosing stress, like in my life because of my nature, I would choose like the path towards the life that I want to live. And we'll talk about that more towards the end of this. But I suppose the concept that we have is quite simple. It's basically buy one $700,000 property. That could be in Brisbane, it could be in Perth, it could be in some other market around Australia. It's really up to you. Like we like Brisbane because of the Olympics coming up and because of the undersupply. We like Melbourne because historically it's been about 29% cheaper than Sydney, and right now it's about 60%. And the outer suburbs are more like 70 to 80% right
Hmm.
now below Sydney. So I think both markets have potential. But we buy a 700K home. In Brisbane, it will rent for a bit more. So maybe 600 a week. In Melbourne, it will rent for sort of $500 per week. And then we get used to that. Now, for some people, that might take a few years or 5 years or
Mm.
6 years before they can go again. For others, you're already sitting on the equity or the cash to buy another one. So one 700K home that rents for 500 a week. Then at some point, we go and do the exact same thing again. One more 700K, simple single income home on a big block of land that rents well, that you don't have to stress about, that rents for another 500 a week.
A, playing devil's advocate,
Yeah.
a question that I always get asked when I outline this strategy in meetings is, what about diversification? Why
Mm.
would I purchase the same property in the same market that I've just done?
And how do you answer that?
Look,
Because I think I know where you're going with this.
I'm pretty brutal for me. Like, if the wheel ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mhm.
I don't need to diversify for the sake of diversification. I think for me, it comes back to the strategy. What's more important? Is it more important for you to replace your annual salary in
Mm.
15 or 20 years from now? Or is it more important for you to diversify your property portfolio? For
Mm.
me, it's a simple answer. Passive income is everything. It's about the ones and zeros. And for me, it's the path of least resistance. What's going to get me from A to B with the least amount of stress, with the least amount of work at the end of the day? And, I feel as though rinsing and repeating, if it makes sense, like if I look at Brisbane, for an example, if you were to buy 2 years ago in certain locations, you've made some incredible returns on your investment.
Mhm.
You may not be able to afford the same property at the same price in the same location 2 years later. So, if you want to keep it at the same budget, in that situation, you
Mm,
may
that's
have
good.
to diversify to still achieve the goals at the end of the day.
There's two things that I was thinking when you asked that question. One of them is you and I have looked at Homely's research and CoreLogic's research about the long-term history. Now, Homely, when we looked at that data that was published by them, and I think it was from a third party, but effectively when we looked at Sydney versus Perth versus Melbourne versus Brisbane, Sydney had done an average of 9.6% per annum from
70,
1976.
70 to 16.
Yeah, so over a 46-year period from 1970 to 2016, Sydney done 9.6% per year when you average the total return divided by the years. Melbourne 9.5, Brisbane 9.7, Perth 8.2. Then Simon Presley went on from Propertyology to say that when he looked at 50 years of data, the average divided by the years was 8.2%. So what we know from history is that Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane do bloody well. And there's no surprise that's where the jobs, incomes, wages, infrastructure is. That's where the people from overseas know where we are as well. And in reality, like I would choose the right market at the right time from one of them if I could afford to.
And it also lowers your risk by being
Mm.
in those markets. You look at the history, they're nowhere near as volatile as smaller regional towns because they do have that economic diversity. They do have the ability to weather the storm because there's
Mm.
so many people. And if shit hits the fan in Australia, we do have a habit of just opening up the floodgates and importing a hell of a lot of people.
Yeah, which I think we've sort of done over the last year and a half secretly. Like I feel like they've been letting 500,000 people in for almost the last couple of years, roughly, like give or take a couple of hundred K, but it's been significant. And I think that's been part of the buffer as we went through inflation and increasing interest rates to sort of protect us a bit from that again, which is an incredible gift that no other developed country really has in the world right now.
So two 700K properties, 1.4 mil combined, around about $1,000 per week combined. It's not going to cut it. So
Yeah.
what's next?
You know, $1,000 a week is nice, but if you can afford to go for a third one, then we sort of start mixing it up. And there's a natural progression as an investor to go from simple single income properties to maybe going, I get this. I've learned the knowledge skills, how to pick markets, suburbs, and the right property type. Maybe I'll look at a house in Granny Flat, or maybe like you're doing at the
Mm.
moment. And you can check out Simon's duplex project on YouTube channel as well to walk through that with him. But maybe I go a duplex. Maybe I like hosting people and I want to try an Airbnb.
Yeah, you could do it like Crystal did it, right? You buy the high set Queenslander, you've got upstairs set up as a 3 bed, 1 bath or 2 bath, and then you can functionally build in downstairs for another 2 bed, 1 bath. Like, I think the idea here is just maximizing the cash flow return on the investment.
Yeah. So for today's example and the simplest way to do it, we're helping a client that you brought on. I sat with them yesterday, like a young couple from Sydney, solicitor, absolute baller, young kid, young family, just figuring it out, about 170K a year of income. Beautiful, beautiful people, like great souls. And they're like, well, we want cash flow and we want growth. And so we're going for an 850K budget for a house with a second house next to it or a granny flat. So it might be a 3 or 4 bedroom home on one side with a firewall like a duplex, and then a 1 or 2 bedroom granny flat on the other side. And the result of that should be at least $1,000 a week in rent.
Yeah,
So,
and I also talked to our mate Davo, who recently did this, and we've got a video coming out about this soon. But he did this where he built it from scratch as well. So he bought the piece of land and then built the dual income property on top of it. Now he did that way back in 2019. So great timing for Lawnton in the north.
yeah.
Um, right next to that Peachtree University, so low vacancy rates. But he just had that revalued at 1,050,000.
So he paid under 600K and it just got valued at 550K more.
And it's renting for $1,100 per week
Wow.
currently.
That's phenomenal. So Davo's the perfect example, right? He had two single income houses and this house in Granny Flat.
Exactly.
And his original goal when he started with us was 2 grand a week, 100K a year. But he also has a goal because he lives down in Sydney of like buying the dream home, but
Mm.
it's bloody expensive. So he has decided to offload two of those three properties. And then he's going to have raised almost $1 million from doing that plus his crypto stuff. And that's going to be a monster down payment and money in the offset account to protect his family for exactly what he wants to live on near the beach in Wollongong.
Exactly. So the beautiful thing about investing, and this has happened to Crystal as well, is it gives you choices because life changes, right? Like, how much has your life changed since you bought your first
So
property?
much.
Same for me as well. Same for Crystal. Same for Davo. Same for every single person that we've ever worked with. Like, the only constant in life is change. And, you know, it's so important to have a clear strategy, but then also things come up and you've got to be willing to adapt to those changes. And sometimes, by doing this, investing in the right markets at the right time, and even just generating a good capital growth return gives you the freedom of choice to buy that dream home for your growing family with a low debt position and a really great LVR.
100%. And that's like the exciting part of this. Like, I started with an intent, and I've told you this before. Like, I had a little notebook where I was writing my dreams back in about 2011. And I'm like, if I can just replace 35K a year, which is my whole living cost at that time, I'll be financially free. And now it's like, Man, my school fees are 35K a year with like uniforms and all
For
the
a
stuff
kid,
that
yeah.
comes. So things do change, and I have bought a lot of properties, and so have you, and I've sold almost three quarters of them because I'm like, things change. Like the guy that started that wanted to own the entire world isn't necessarily the guy now. But the strategy is that simple: two 700K normal homes and one 850K dual income home. Please don't hang us on this, guys, because the market is going up. And so things change around these prices. And people are like, well, I saw that. I listened to that thing and it was 700K and now it's 720. And it's like, well, you know, that's the market.
Yeah, we can't change the market. We've just got to work within it. I wish I had more influence, but I don't.
So where you end up as a result of that is effectively 2,250K worth of property and $2,000 a week or 100K per year of income. Now, what I love about this is we don't have to be mathematicians to figure out where we could be 15 years from now. So if you type into Google compound growth calculator plus mini web tool, you'll get spammed with about 3,000 ads, but it has an
It works.
incredible calculator that works. So all I did is I put that 2,250,000, 2,250,000 bucks. I'm shaking today. Worth of property into that calculator, and I said, okay, I'm going to hold it for 15 years, and it's going to grow by an average of 5% per year, which I think, based on the history, is very, very conservative. Knowing that Australia's done 8.2% for the 50 years up to today. So we end up in 15 years' time with $4,677,000 worth of property, and we want you to own that debt free.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who do you know that's starting at 25, 30, 40, that ends up by the time they're 50 being worth $5 million because you're going to have super, you're going to have a job, you're going to have savings, you're going to have other investments. And in terms of the rent, when we put that 100K in, the same calculated for 15 years at 2.5% a year, we end up with $144,000 a year worth of income. Now, even if you lose 44K of that to management rates, water, insurances, land tax, etc., you're still going to have 100 grand net, which is 2 grand a week, which is a nice place to be before you even get out of bed and start working. You know what I mean?
Too bloody right. There shouldn't be anybody that's not happy with that outcome. And if you are, then you probably listened to the wrong podcast.
Yeah, there's a Lambo one over there as well.
But it gives you, like, I always call the third step or the third stage of this investment journey the freedom/choices phase, because you've got the two options there. You have the freedom to live off that passive income and sustain a great quality of life in Australia. Or you've got the choice to mix things up. You could sell a property and pocket the cash and reduce the cash flow income. You could sell everything and reinvest it into a different asset class if you want to at that point in time. You could add additional properties to it if you're not really feeling super excited about those numbers. It's each to their own at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people think, okay, well, how am I going to buy $2.25 million worth of property? Like, the banks are struggling to loan me 700K.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a conundrum for a lot of people. And I think it's hard to answer that question without having a mortgage broker sit down right next to us and tell us. But it's personal circumstances and things change, right? Like right now, we appear to be at the peak of the interest rate rising cycle. By the time this comes out, we may even be in a rate declining cycle. So when you've got 6.5% retail rates, but they're servicing you at 8.5 to 9%, it's really difficult to show to the banks that you can service those loans. But I remember 4 years ago, retail rates were in the low twos, high ones. And so there was so much more servicing. So I guess you do need to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves, but you've also got to be content when the market isn't allowing you to do any more.
And I've been there for most of my journey personally. Like when I started out, I was earning 55K a year working at IBM, and me and two friends of mine went and bought our first property, a 2-bedroom unit in the south side of Sydney for 360K. And then I went to the bank 6 months after and I said, what can I borrow? And they said $230,000. So I bought my first property for 360 and my second for 215. And that was, it ended up being 214 actually. That is all I could borrow. And then I had to wait. Like, I loved investing, but I had to wait a couple of years after that point, like a year and a half, to even think about my next one. And I only was able to do it because my income increased and my wife started working and we were able to put our incomes together. And so, like you said off camera before, like the journey of 1,000 steps starts with one step.
Mm,
And if you can not do anything right now, like not even take your first step, then just keep learning. Like
mm,
keep figuring stuff
mhm,
out, keep listening to us and other people out there with good ideas. But if you can take one step, then like you said, talk to your accountant, talk to your broker, talk to some people around you that you trust to get some ideas and have a crack. And if you don't feel comfortable having a crack, then learn more and talk to more people until you do. And you'll be surprised that, like, I've talked to so many people, right? Like the guy I spoke to yesterday that's just signed back up. When I first worked with him, he was a chippy, I think it was, or maybe he was working as a sparky. I'm just trying to remember, but it was a trade related role. Um, and at the time, he was earning a small amount of money. He was able to buy one property. In the 8 years between like us buying the first property and now us buying the next one for him in Melbourne, he basically went out there and bought a whole bunch of properties in Sydney himself. He started a business. He's absolutely balling. He's got a partner that's doing well as well. And so it's like you just can't imagine with consistent education where you might end up. And I think starting with one property is a huge win. And then at some point, if you can do another one, go again. If you're already balling out, then, talk to your brokers, your financial advisors, and see what you can honestly do. And then look into your own self and go, where does that sit against my risk profile, my tolerance, my weekly cash flow? Can I cover it? And not even can I cover it, can I stomach it if I do
mm.
it as well? Like these are big strategies. There's a reason why people work for 50 years before they get free or on the pension.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, you're gonna be working regardless, right?
Yeah.
And unless I won't even go there, but, you know, I think a lot of people have this illusion of wanting the passive income sooner. They want that early retirement, and, what I love about this is once you've accumulated those assets, $2.25 million worth of property, generating $2,000 per week, that's an incredible rental yield,
Incredible.
and soon enough, those properties are gonna be paying for themselves.
The
So
moat comes up, the debt goes down, and the surplus gets bigger and bigger over time.
So what I love about that is if you're working a job that you hate, that you want an early retirement from, maybe you're in the wrong career. Maybe you're not doing, what you were put on this planet to do. So the freedom that this strategy gives you once you've completed the accumulation phase is financial peace to go out and change careers and do something that gets you out of bed in the mornings. Yeah,
Mm.
I do talk to a lot of friends in Sydney that hate what they do, and they are doing the daily grind, but just about every single one of my friends up here on the Sunshine Coast is doing really meaningful, purpose-driven work that they're excited about, that they never wanna stop doing.
Mm.
And I think that's a reality of a human being. Like, we're not built to just chill. We're built to add value in
Mm.
some way, shape, or form. But if you don't feel as though you're adding value, just know that maybe you're in a stage of life where you're forced to make some sacrifices to set yourself and your family up for the future. But just know there's a light, not at the end of the tunnel, but literally halfway through the tunnel, that you can sort of jump ship throughout this strategy, go find something that might be a bit of a pay cut, but could be more in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing.
I think by the time I bought my sixth property, I still hadn't found work that I really enjoyed. Like that was the reality. Like I was going to work and I was investing for two reasons. One, because it made going to work so much more meaningful because I was there to earn money for my family and to set our family up. And so every dollar that I earned was like a dollar I could save and invest. And that made work exponentially better in jobs I didn't like. And then the second thing was I was building skills that would now enable me to become the person that I wanted to be. Like,
Mm,
I think the idea that it's always perfect for everyone is just so untrue. And even as people who do stuff that we love, there are still really hard weeks, really hard days, sometimes hard years. Like,
mm,
sometimes it's just rough. And I think with that, like working towards something has changed my life for the better. Like knowing why I'm going to work, knowing who it's for, which is my family, and being really clear on what that could potentially give me if that's still what I want at that time. So for me, property is just a vehicle that you can get this incredible leverage in Australia with relative safety to move towards who you want to be. And that is for us, like, and for me, time with my family, time to train, to surf. I missed it this morning big time, which I'm defo about, but you got it.
Yeah, I've been having a good month.
You've been having a great month. You're doing Surf February at the moment and raising money for charity, which is just so beautiful.
Yeah,
Like time to do stuff like that, bro.
yeah, seriously, like, to have the ability to surf every day has been a dream of mine, and I'm living that dream, and still spending quality time with my son, still working this job and absolutely crushing it and loving
Yeah.
it, and still focusing on my investments as well. Like, I'm trying to use 2025 as a year to prove to myself that I can have my cake and eat it too.
I love that.
I can do really meaningful, purpose-driven work that gets me excited. I can do fun investments that are moving the dial and getting me ahead.
Mm.
I can spend quality time with family and loved ones, and I can, enjoy going on holidays or surfing or whatever it might be. And we're in Feb, so we'll see how that goes.
No, man, it's just beautiful. And it's the intention and
Yeah.
it's the daily discipline and the consistency and the habits. And it's like, of course, there's going to be days of this year that sort of are hard, and there's going to be the best days of your life this year. And this is the ebb and flow of it all. And I think there's the big rocks like the travel and like the slightly nicer car or the opportunity to go away with your family or the caravan, or there's the simple things like being able to like grow your own veggie patch and chuck kick like chickens out the back because you have a bigger property now, or the ability to go down to 4.5 or 4 days a week, or take a few extra weeks off a year unpaid because you don't need the income, or to get your wife or yourself away from some of the work and both of you to go 3 days a week, or to just even rock up to your kids' sports carnival, or to drop the kids at school, or to pick them up, or to be there in the afternoons for them to play.
It's a massive reason why to do it.
Yeah, like the reason is so compelling
Mm,
that I feel like obliged to share
yeah,
this. This is why we're doing this content. Like we love what we do, but it's like the purpose of our work really is just to go, hey, we figured it out.
mm.
Like we're still on our way. I'm not getting the passive income that I'm looking for right now,
But you don't need it right now either.
but I've got the portfolio that will get it once I
Mm,
paid off in the
mm.
future. And it's like, and the journey is now the destination, and helping people
Love
realize that
that.
like if us, like from where we
Yeah,
started
bro.
out, could work towards this place with the incomes that we had. Like you, when you first came in, like this was like a trade. Like
Yeah.
you really started on like ridiculously low income for the
Yeah.
first 3 or 4 years. You absolutely busted your ass to learn every single thing like an electrician would or an engineer would. And then you still over that time just sacrificed and worked hard and bought a few properties. And then as your income, knowledge, and skills grew, you went on to do cooler stuff. And it's like start where you are.
That's another important thing as well, because I know there's some younger investors that are ambitious that are listening to this and are like, I can't afford 700K. And like, just because these are the numbers that we've chosen for today,
Mm.
it's because they're easy round numbers. Like
There's phenomenal properties out there at the moment we can source for 450K.
well, yeah, that's the thing. 450 that rent for about 400, 450, or even still, you could get a $550,000 property that rents for 450 to 500. So you're still getting a similar rental return there as well.
Maybe I should have done those numbers because I forgot what we can get with
Ye-
some of the stuff we're now starting to find. Like
But it's
there's
good
better
to
numbers than that.
It's good to inflate as
Yeah.
well. But you just got to start with where you're at. And like as we said before, like the market's bigger than us. We can't change property prices. We can't ask for them to be lower. We can't ask for them to be higher. We do have to work in with the banks. They're only going to loan us a certain amount of money depending on your personal situation. So you've just got to work with what you've got. But what I hope people are starting to understand is you just need to make the best decision that you possibly can
Mm.
with that money. Because there is incredible investment opportunity from 450 in Australia if you know where to look, and doing something is more often than not better than doing nothing.
From talking to literally 6 or so thousand plus investors now in the last 10 years in this business, I've realized that the problem with this is the progress is a bit slower going than people expect. 15 years, 10 years is a long period of your life, but that is 3 to 4 times faster than anyone else in your life that's not doing it. And I'm not saying property is the only way. Like I was
Yeah.
literally helping my brother-in-law, like do some like not gardening, like basically just putting in a pool. So just moving stuff around for him for a whole day last week. The concrete truck driver rocked up, and I'm just like I am. I'm like, just what are you? what are you doing? He's like, I just got back from 2 years around Oz. And I'm like, oh man, I just got back from 6 months. And he's like, yeah, we got into gold about 3.5 years ago. He's like, I actually just sold our house and I bought more than $1 million worth of gold, and it's been going up by 45% a year for the last 2 years. And I'm like, crazy. Like, what? This concrete truck driver's like, yeah, I used to be a pilot, but we wanted to move to Queensland because we love it here. And this is what I'm just doing on the side to keep busy.
Wow.
And I'm just like, and then you talk to people like Davo, crushed it in crypto.
Yeah.
And then you talk to other people that have crushed it in stocks. And it's like, there's not just one way. Like, I'm not just pro property. I just like it because it's simple. I can touch it. It doesn't fluctuate as much, although it does fluctuate sometimes. And the banks will lend me money at 5 to 10 times what I give them. And it's like, I can't get that return if I don't have the leverage. So that's why I'm getting above average returns. And at one point, I'll get lazy. I'll get sick of tenants. I'll get sick of land tax. I'll get sick of everything. And I'll probably just go into cash or a stock portfolio, but not when you're this young.
I think another thing is just the life expectancy for people that are under the age of 40 as well. You know, like if you're looking after yourself and you're between the age of 0 to 40, the
But that's
likelihood
so
of you living to over 100, a centenarian, is super high.
Wow.
It's crazy high. So I think that time horizon needs to shift. And if people do think that 10 or 15 years is a long period of time, then you need to adjust your time horizon, because if you're, you know, anywhere under the age of 40, you've still got at least 20 years of your working life. And, you know, you've still got at least 60 years of living in general. And it's like, don't give up, or don't think that your life is going to end at 60. Like a lot of, you know, people that are at the age of 60, like have that mentality. So just recognizing that we're living longer, healthier, more vital. The retirement age is going up, you know, neither here nor there on that. But I think watching my dad, our dad, who's 70 years of age, he's just signed another 5-year lease on his property, just bought a $300,000 machine, one of 2 machines in the country as a printer. And I look at some of his friends that are the same age, and they're not doing as good if they're retired. Like, because dad has a place to be where he's needed, he's wanted, he's got something to do. It gives him a routine, a structure to follow, to do the daily. And, you know, I think it's just recognizing that you're going to live a hell of a lot longer. Try and find something to do with your life where you're happy to do it for a long period of time.
I love
Takes a lot of
hearing
pressure
that.
off when you find that as well.
Yeah, like once you take off the pressure of like, I need to hit this goal when, and I just start to enjoy the journey. And like, I was actually thinking about when you were saying that, my kids, right? Like, I played a lot of competitive sport growing up. So did you. So did so many of our clients. Like, you know, a lot of people that come to work in our business, like, have a big health value. And it's whether you're getting to fully express that now or not. It's important to all of us to be healthy as we age. And with my kids, right? One of my daughters is probably like in her 4th year of netball, right? And I was thinking about property versus sport as a child. Now, my child has no goal of the future for netball at all. She understands that when she's in season, they train hard, and sometimes she's exhausted, and then they play, and then they get feedback, and sometimes the feedback's good, sometimes it's bad. And then they get a down season when they're just doing nothing. And she's like, well, I'm not running every day. I'm not catching the ball 3-4 days a week. Like, I'm not talking about it with my friends all the time. I'm just resting and recovering. And
I get it.
she gets it. Like, all kids get it. It's like, this is a 10 to 20-year journey for her, that she'll just love netball. Maybe, maybe not. She'll be a superstar at it. Who cares? It's just
Enjoying the journey.
And it's like, when did we become so focused on, I'm earning 100K now and I can't live next year without figuring out how to replace it? And that's how I lived, unfortunately. And it's like, when you can buy, that's a season of sport. Enjoy the season, have fun with it, because it's not going to last. And you're going to be sick of it by the end of it. And by the next season, you're ready to go again. You'll be so refreshed and ready to go. And it's like, you know, we have a plan and an idea to get towards 15 years of freedom. For some of our clients, that's 10 that are balling. For others, it's 20. But if it is a season and this is your new game, because we get to play less games as adults. So what if the game was, I go to work.
Not if you live in my house.
Yeah, we play
Monopoly
a lot of
deal every fucking night.
The table getting thrown. But it's kind of like this thing. It's like, just it can be joyful. Yeah, it's stressful up front when you don't have a team, when you're not working with a BA, when you don't know how to find the right market or the right suburb or the property, when you lose 20 or 30 properties because other people keep buying them from you, when your solicitor's shit and they get you into trouble or whatever else, you don't know what to look for and you find out later on, like I've done, that you bought a lemon. But it's the game. It's like, okay, like she loses every second week. She wins every other week. Like she comes off the court. How's that? That was fun.
Yeah.
Like she does have a desire to win. She's competitive as, but it's like, it's just this is all just part of the fun of the journey. And it's like, I'd rather be in the arena working towards something than not.
Rather than like putting so much weight on the destination and thinking that that's going to make me happy when, it's actually the journey. And it's so cliche to say that, but it's the actual truth. I was talking to my mate Blakey the other day, and he's running a really successful marketing agency in Sydney. And, he's looked at me and some of our other friends that have invested a lot, and he's kind of felt though he's behind the 8 ball sometimes. And I'm like, bro, you've got the golden ticket.
Yeah.
You've got a really successful business that is an absolute cash cow. You focus your energy into developing the right skills, developing the right business that's going to allow you to fast track this journey. And I felt a little bit that way as well when I was getting started compared to some of my friends. And it can turn around really quickly, but he had just landed like a massive client. Like I'm talking like this hundreds of millions of dollars per year worth of revenue this business is generating. He's landed him, and he was like working on this for years to try and land this client, and then he did it, and he's like, I felt good for about 5 maybe 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden other tasks started piling back up. It took me out of that moment. I had to focus on that next thing. And he's like, I thought those big wins in life were going to make me happier, but going through that experience and until you go through it, you finally realize, oh shit, that the destination isn't going to make me any happier.
No.
And you've got to enjoy the process. You've got to make sure that you enjoy the journey. And then when you achieve the destination, definitely stop to smell the roses. Definitely pat yourself on the back, appreciate the hard work, the sacrifice, the discipline that you've endured for years to get to that destination. But then also realize we're human beings.
There's got to be another climb. There's got to be another run.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be financial. It can be physical. It can be mental. It can be spiritual. It can be so many different things, but just having a North Star, having a guiding light. And you and I are great for this, like always booking in that next trip and going, okay, cool. Well, that's my reprieve. That's when I get to take the pressure off. But for now, I'm in go mode, and it's time to work at it. Or then like resetting those goalposts, like we've just identified Melbourne as a good investment market. I'm not getting too caught up about it or getting FOMO, but I'm starting to lay the foundations, and I'm starting to implement what I can currently control in order to get myself into a position so that I can take advantage of that market. 3 years ago, I had absolutely zero interest or intention to invest in Melbourne. But now as an investor, I've seen that opportunity. And I'm like, I've got to take advantage of that opportunity because I know I can't control the market and I don't want it to run away from me.
100%. It's like, I remember going for dinner 10 years ago, and a really good friend of my wife, who we've become family friends with, Mia and John, she was like, yeah, we paid off our house. And I was like, wow, that's like a huge thing. Like, congratulations. It was sort of like a dinner, I think, so they could tell us and so that we could be excited, because we are excited. Like, I love seeing everyone around me win. Like, I'm the person when you're winning to be like, fucking oath. Like, and she said it was really weird, the same as Blake said to you, that the day that she walked out, she thought, honestly, in her mind, because she'd sacrificed for 10 years to get to that point, she'd been working towards that since she was 12. Like, she'd been saving, left school at like 15, bought the first home at like 18, that was it. Like, missed everything that everyone else did because she had this goal that I'm going to pay off my home before I'm like mid-20s. She did, and she thought on the day she did, there'd be people outside the home high-fiving, like slapping her hands, so excited for her. The first 2 or 3 people she told, which were family members, were like, oh,
Jealous.
Yeah, like, oh, I didn't do it till I was 40 or 50 or whatever else. Like the normal shit you hear. The only friends in her life that she could tell it to were like us. And it's just one of those weird things. It's like Jim Carrey says it better, like, I wish everyone could be rich and famous so that you'd realize that being rich and famous doesn't make you happy. What makes you happy is what Ned Brockman's doing. Like, I just read his book. You just watched his Netflix doco.
Epic doco.
I can't wait to watch it tonight. And it's just trying.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you win, lose, or
Commit to
fail.
something.
Yeah, like move towards something one step at a time. And if my journey's been financial freedom, often at the expense of my mental health, physical health, relationships, but it's been the mountains that I've chose to climb. And I'm like, I look back and I'm like, fucking, that's exhausting. Climbing like 18 Everest in 18 years, or 15 years, but it's also been the most rewarding, fulfilling thing of my life, because now it is no longer about us. It's about each one teach one. Like, who can we turn and pull up now? And it's like, we hope this community of people is just positive and stoked to fucking crush it with us together, and be the beacon in your own communities, the leader that pulls everyone else around you up with your knowledge, skills, everything.
If this podcast does nothing but change that tall poppy syndrome to helping people feel more confident, to lift their friends up, to celebrate others' wins and not be selfish and not try and keep up with the Joneses, but to just authentically and realistically be super happy for anybody else's wins, because that's what you see in the best teams around the world, the best businesses around the world. They're all supportive, collaborative, and they're all celebrating those big wins in life. And I think we lack that heaps here in Australia because we were colonized by England, and England's got a worse version of it.
Yeah.
But let's be a little bit more like America in that sense. You know what I mean? Like, just actually lifting other people up for their big wins in life.
Yeah. I heard something great once, and it was like, people in Australia will walk past the Lamborghini and unfortunately key it or say something about it or try and take it. And in America, they'll walk past someone with the Lambo and go, how did you buy it? How do you own this? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just a culture of, you said this year, like one of your big things is being curious. Like, curiosity is exploring like a kid and going, I just lost 7 netball games in a row, but I'm still showing up to training. I'm still smiling. I'm just hanging with my friends, and like, we're sharpening as we go. And it's like, I want to be more of that. Like, I want to be more curious about all these things. It's like, I banged up so many things on my journey to here as an investor, like no idea what I was doing. You learn. And it's like, we teach people who want to learn. We teach people who want to help themselves get there faster. We teach people who don't want to fuck it up and have to go through 18 properties like I do and get the same result that you got out of 4. Like, we teach people who get that Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth are all good, but if the numbers look good here, and then out of 4,000 suburbs, these 18 look good, and you're that like type that's just obsessed with that for some weird reason. It's like, you could call it blood in the water, you could call it OCD, you could call it just like numbers, you could call it whatever else you want to call it. There's probably a few other medical names.
Asperger's.
But it's just like having a desire to just want to get it sick.
It's curiosity as well. It's like, what's going to be? Like, what is going to be the best performer? And we'll get it wrong, but as long as we beat the averages, like that's really fun. And it's like, it kind of, I don't even know how to explain it, so I'm not even going to go down.
Can I say this? Because the way that I was thinking about explaining it is, in 10 years of buying Brisbane for our clients, and I'm 13 years or something of buying it myself, for myself, like over $550 million worth of property purchase now for over 1,000 people. In those 10 years, I've seen 3 separate years where prices have come down in that 1 year at some point by between 8 and 15%. And I've seen prices in some years for a period of time go down as much as 30 or 40%. Like the start of COVID, no one for 9 months. But
That's negotiating.
What has happened is that every person that has gone through that bumpy road, and it makes you sick when you're in a year where it's going down 15%, you're like, this is fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible, especially if you just bought the year before and we're hoping that the next year's better, and you can never know what's going to happen next year. But every single person that bought 10 years ago has made money. 200K, 400K.
Depending on their starting price, really.
100%. Like, people that started with a property, like buying some properties in the Gold Coast for people for 230K.
Yeah.
Or buying other properties for people back then for $1 million.
I remember when you buy in Sunny Coast, Merredon Plains, and people were like, Merredon Plains, what is that? And now it's like such a hot spot.
Is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
they probably tripled their money there over the 7 or 8
Oh,
years
yeah.
since we bought it.
Yeah, too right.
And it's like, well, we saw, because we grew up in Sydney, it's only 2Ks from the beach.
Yeah.
And you're getting a brand new home for like
Yeah.
600 or 700K.
There was that really cool ABC News report that they did on 7:30, and it was sort of looking at the Australian housing crisis, and they went into Melbourne, into Tarneet, which is one of the 18 I shouldn't have shared that I have now.
Woo, cat's out of the bag,
Cat's out of the bag. But they interviewed people there, and that suburb the population has more than doubled over the last 15 years, and it's currently got 300,000 people that live in the Wyndham Shire Council. And that is expected to get to 500,000 people within the next 15 years. You talk to people that are born and raised in Melbourne about this region, and it's kind of like us when you talk about, Campbelltown, Bankstown, Penrith in Sydney, or you talk about Logan in Brisbane. But then you go to these markets, you meet the locals, you meet the business owners.
Beautiful humans.
Just full care. And a lot of people that are living there, they've come from humble beginnings. And that is their prized possession. That is what they call home. They don't need to be living in Vaucluse. They don't need to be living in St Kilda. They don't need to be living in Kangaroo Point. They want to be living in that community. They're proud to be living in that community. They're grateful to be living in that community.
We grew up in these communities. Like, it actually almost makes me cry, because I'm like, it's such this is the thing about society. Like, it underestimates the greatest people in it. And there's a really good quote, like, those who are greatest now will be least, and those who are least now will be greatest. Like, in that, from a spiritual perspective, I think we are good people. All we ever wanted to be were like people that help people. Everyone that we know is exactly like that. We grew up in like the version of Campbelltown back then, like Southern Shire, Engadine was like that. And now a mate of ours just bought a townhouse in the suburb that we grew up in that our parents would have paid 70K for 1.8 mil. Things change. Don't underestimate what 10 million people in Melbourne and how close 20Ks to the city will seem at that time. And I love that people are underestimating it. I love when they did that in Sydney and we're buying there. I love when they did that in Brisbane. I love that everyone's writing off Melbourne. The first thing is, didn't everyone leave? Doesn't everyone hate it? Isn't the state bankrupt? I'm like, yep. Also, vacancy rates have gone from 7% to 1 or 2%. When I look at some of these suburbs with 300 or 400 sales a year, there's been one building approval in 2 to 3 years. There is a chronic undersupply occurring, because while everyone went, didn't the Aussies leave? 500, 600,000 people from overseas plus 200,000 or 300,000 students a year came back. They're all back. And the Australian government is flooding Melbourne to fix it.
Yeah, it's going to be a run down there for sure.
Yeah, 10 years from now.
Now you're giving me FOMO.
Yeah,
for
same.
fuck's sake.
I have FOMO. I'm actually like thinking about getting a self-managed super fund set up so that I can buy something in Melbourne.
I was looking at the data yesterday because I had a little bit of a break in Melbourne, because I was like, okay, well, the Melbourne average has gone down by 3 to 6% over the last 12 months. And then I'm looking at some of these suburbs and I'm like, well, they went up by like 1 to 3% over the past 12 months. So what's the disconnect here? And I'm like, I have a thing about wanting to pick the suburb bottom. I've never been able to successfully do it, but close to.
You've bought it every single property, you picked the bottom.
It's been pretty good, but I want to do it again, being greedy. But I'll just have to be patient, because I'm not in a position to do anything right now, and that's okay. And I think, for me personally, I can be patient.
Yeah, like me too, because in reality,
I have to be.
This is what we know. That markets, everyone listening to this might be like, doesn't everyone know this? 1,000 people might listen to this.
Yeah.
If this went viral for us, maybe 3,000 people would watch it. And so people don't know what you guys know. Like, we're trying to bring ideas to you guys early as. And I think about that, like, Perth didn't run until there was a 10% year, because the average person buys winners. Stocks run when stocks are winning. Crypto wins when crypto's
perfect example.
Crypto runs when it's going up. Like, one of the simplest things you can do as a stock trader is just buy what's going up.
Yeah.
It massively reduces your downside risk short term. So until Melbourne went down, we did the monthly market update by 3% this year, and it went down by 0.6% this month. Like,
Yeah.
it is looking shite to the
Mm,
average
mm,
person.
mm.
And you'll see Perth go up probably 9 to 20% this year, according to SQM. Brisbane do 6 to 16. Like, Adelaide do the same. It's like, why would I buy Melbourne when it's declining, is what the average person that's not listening to this stuff is thinking. And it's like,
Think in decades, not years.
I love that. Like,
That's
there you
all you
go,
gotta
Paul.
do. Yeah. I love it, man. I think that's a bit of a wrap. What do you
Yeah,
reckon?
that's a wrap. I'll just keep ranting if
Yeah.
you made a wrap. Let's wrap. But we love all of you guys, and thanks for
100%.
letting us rant.
Yeah.
G'day guys, my name's Ben and I'm the director here at Pumped on Property, and I just want to say a massive thank you for watching our content today. Now, if you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 12 months, then the team and I would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. In that session, we can talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and we can deeply educate you on the Australian market. And then you can take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each week. To book your session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that book your free strategy session button. But either way, we wish you all the best on your journey as an investor to financial freedom.